Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about Week 15 IDP recap, as well as our predictions for Week 16. With us today is a special guest making his first appearance with Front Office Pros, which is none other than Steve Tomasin. Steve is working with the IDP Guys, and he's also known as the Dynasty Santa. So ho, 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 and Merry Christmas there, Santa.
Yeah, it's perfect time to have me on, right? Just about a week, or less than a week at this point, to Christmas here. So appreciate you guys having me on. It's one of my favorite times of the year, both from the holidays perspective and from football perspective. We've got some really exciting matchups and games coming up here. So great time of the year.
Hike.
So, Steve, let's just rebrand this video altogether. So we're going to start with our IDP presents from Week 15. So who was the present under the Christmas tree for those who played them last week?
Yeah. One of my favorite guys this year, at least for the past few weeks, has been Minnesota Vikings edge rusher DJ Wonnum. And you may have thought I was going to say Danielle Hunter, who of course is weekly. He's an easy one to talk about, right? You're starting him every week if you got him. But flying maybe a little bit under the radar is DJ Wonnum, his counterpart on the opposite side of that line there. Just been one of my favorite guys. Actually have kind of turned a corner on him. Previously entering this season, wasn't the biggest fan of his. And actually, he's still not grading particularly well if you put any stock into like PFF grades and whatnot. But his actual, IDP fantasy production since week 12, in the scoring from the IDP Invitational charity tournament that we run, he's been the number 13 defensive end in terms of fantasy points averaging per game. So that's just right outside the top 12 there. I think Danielle Hunter, of course, is number 3, but just 10 spots down from that, you find Mr. Wonnum here, who, like I said, is still very much flying under the radar and might even be available in your leagues, depending on how deep or shallow they might be. So been a big fan of his, turned the corner, like I said, over these past few weeks here. He's really been turning up the IDP production for his managers. So
yeah, the former 4th-round pick out of South Carolina, not a household name. I agree with you. Actually, when you mentioned him, I was like, wait, you're talking about DJ Wonnum? But like you said, you look at the stats, he's been on a roll. He's already got 8 sacks on the year. He's in a contract year. So, Joe, we know what that means. He's going to ball out so he can cash out. I wonder, do you think, Joe, I'll ask you on this. Do you think Brian Flores has helped the emergence of Wonnum? Because Wonnum has really just been this rotational guy. Obviously, Brian Flores has a huge pedigree as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Do you think that's helped him blossom to come to this point of where he's this, reliable starter?
Yeah, definitely. I really think Brian Flores has a lot to do with that whole Minnesota Vikings defense. We're talking about one of the worst defenses last year. And now, just his aggressiveness, their ability to blitz and just be aggressive. We've even seen that help Danielle Hunter, who I was a little concerned with after losing Zadarius Smith. But now, DJ Wonnum, he's just the guy when you watch the Minnesota Vikings, you just can't miss him. Yeah, Hunter's getting his, but this guy's just been an absolute animal lately, getting after it, doing everything, knocking down passes, getting the strip sacks and really just getting it done.
Yeah, he's been chipping it everywhere. I wanted to look up quickly his stat count, because that's been the other thing. So he started off the year kind of 79, 68, 89, but then down to 62, 56, 71. But the past few weeks, he's been in the mid to high 90s for quite some time. So that's really been helping his, obviously, the more you're on the field, the more opportunity you're getting. So that's really been a jumping off point for Wonnum this year, is to increase snap counts. Starting at about week 7 and 8, he's been consistently in the 90s, all the way up from the mid 50s to 70s, earlier in the season. So that's been a big part of his development so far this year.
Yeah, I think Brian Flores, man, he just creates headaches for these offensive linemen. They don't have any idea who's coming. They're thinking one thing, another thing happens. And I think it's just, adding to everyone just being able to wreak havoc amongst that D-line and, linebacker, safeties blitzing, and you just don't know where it's going to come from ultimately.
There's no question that due to his coaching, it has allowed, I think, the Minnesota Vikings defense to overachieve based on the talent they have on that roster. So well done by him. So, Joe, who is your Christmas present under the tree from week 15?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Bradley Chubb, man. He was an absolute game wrecker.
Bradley Chubb, the former Denver Bronco?
The former Denver Broncos, Steve. Yes, the guy I was, happy they traded away. But yeah, I'm going with Bradley Chubb. He had a nice matchup against the Jets defense, and certainly didn't disappoint. He had 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 3 sacks, 5 solos, 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and even a hurry as well. He definitely made up for his missed sack against Will Levis that forced him to, toss his helmet in frustration and cost the Dolphins a 15-yard penalty. But, I mean, he was out there for 69% of the snaps and had a 25% pressure rate and, filled up the stat sheet with those stats that I mentioned.
It's tough not to have a good game against the Jets offensive line, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Mekhi Becton, man, just watching that, there was times where he's lining up the block and he absolutely blocked nobody and people just going right by him. I mean, I don't know how he's a starting tackle in the league.
It's interesting. I was this close to saying Bradley Chubb myself, decided to go a different direction. But I was watching that game and I was like, oh, wow, Bradley Chubb made the play. Oh, wow, Bradley Chubb made the play. Oh, wow, Bradley Chubb made the play. It was just like consecutive plays. I mean, this guy was an absolute menace. Well, the thing is, what I'm not understanding here is he played under Vic Fangio under Denver. And then maybe, Joe, you know this more than anybody as a Broncos fan. What is allowing him to excel? I mean, I think this has got to be his best year ever. I mean, he has performed at a really high clip. He looks super healthy. He doesn't even have Jalen Phillips on the opposite side. I know Andrew Van Ginkel has been good, but I mean, he was really a rotational guy before. Like, what is making Chubb perform so well? Because even when he got traded from the Broncos last year, I think he was pretty lackluster. All of a sudden this year, he's on the hunt.
Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty good year. I believe when he was a rookie, Vic Fangio was there, and he had a pretty good year to start there. Then injuries kind of happened, and he just wasn't able to get back to what he did his rookie year. But obviously, I think reuniting with Fangio and then, having a guy like Christian Wilkins in the center as well. The Broncos never had a talented defensive tackle like that guy, and his ability just to push up the front in force guys to drop back versus being able to step up the pocket is huge for edge rushers.
Yeah, right now he has 9.5 total sacks and 6 forced fumbles. So that's the most forced fumbles he's had by far. It's double the most he's ever had. I'm surprised he actually hasn't over 10 sacks yet, to be honest with you. In his rookie year, Joe, like you're talking about, he had 12 sacks. But by the end of the year, he'll be over 10 for sure. So
especially if they get to play the Jets again, I'm not sure if they.
Oh yeah.
No, they already played twice, but if they were able to play the Jets again, he would be eclipsing that number for sure.
So my Christmas present under the Christmas tree from last week is defensive end Montez Sweat. Now, let me say, guys, the national media was criticizing the Chicago Bears at quite a amount. And that was, people were saying, what were they doing? Why did they give up so much to acquire Montez Sweat when the 49ers were able to acquire Chase Young for not nearly as much? What was Chicago doing? Well, I think Chicago looks like they might be having the last laugh here, fellas. Montez Sweat started off slow, but of late, he has been on a sack streak. And, man, he had a game against the Cleveland Browns. He had 7 total tackles, 5 solo, 1 tackle for a loss, 3 QB hits, 2.5 sacks, 4 hurries, and a forced fumble. That's a lot. There's a mouthful. With an 89.5 PFF grade. I mean, this guy was a monster. The impressive part about all this is the Bears' defense, by him coming in, it's like the identity of that defense has completely changed. That defense is actually playing really, really well. And honestly, it might even save Eberflus' job, although I don't really think it should. But I'll tell you what, guys, he is – I have been super impressed with Sweat. He now is – this is pretty sad, but he is now the sack leader for the Bears and the Commanders. He hasn't been the Commanders for a number of weeks, and he's still the sack leader. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Sweat's a guy. I mean, we've always liked the talent. I'll admit, I gave up on him during that cold stretch when he just got there in some shallower leagues where I was kind of just churning and streaming guys. But boy, do I regret that now. But man, for Dynasty Outlook, you're very, very happy to have him be free of that terrible Washington franchise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know we talked about this guy before, Steve, and, it was shortly after, I think we called him a dud shortly after that trade happened. We were just, concerned with the lack of other guys on that defense. And, how is Sweat going to get his when he had the flux of talent in Washington, then he didn't have that in Chicago and, could get focused on. But, man, that concern's out the window now, and he's been playing great. And no coincidence either, the Bears defense as a whole has been a lot better. They were once a defensive target, but not so much anymore.
Well, I think too, a part of the reason why we called them a dud was that they gave a second round pick for him, and that was going to be a high second. So it was like, wow, like you're giving up a ton for a guy who has got 1 year left on his contract, and then you sign him to a mega deal. So then at that point, I was like, okay, we'll see what happens there. But man, he has been playing so well, and the interesting part is that he's got no bookend. Yannick Ngakoue is out for the year, so he's been really doing this really on his own. I mean, he doesn't really have anybody to work with on that defensive line. So I got to tell you guys, I'm really impressed by Montez Sweat. And like you said, from a dynasty perspective, Steve, I think he's somebody to monitor because he's always been a guy who's been under the radar. I want to say he's never ever had 10 sacks in his career. He's always kind of hovering. I want to check that right now. I don't think he's ever had 10 plus sacks.
I think 8 maybe is his peak because he's had injury issues in the past, I believe, as well. I know he came into the league fighting injury or possibly an odd health condition, if I remember correctly. So, I think you might be right there. Maybe 10 exactly, but I want to say maybe 8 is probably.
So he had 7 in his rookie year, 9 in 2020, 5 in 2021, 8 in 2022, and then this year he's had a total of 12 and a half. So 6.5 with Washington in 8 games, and then 6 sacks with the Bears in 6 games. So this is his first time over 10 sacks. But man, Bears took a gamble. It's paying off.
Love to see it.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So are you enjoying this video so far? Well, if you are, show your support to our new channel by hitting the subscribe button and liking this video. We'll be creating videos all NFL season long, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So heading over to, that time when we're looking at Cole and the stocking. Man, no one wants to receive Cole and the stocking, Santa. So who was that piece of Cole from week 15?
For me, it was the Packers edge rusher, Rashan Gary. A guy who's just massively talented, got paid an enormous contract coming off an injury. So all year, the narrative for us has kind of been, well, they're slowly ramping up his snaps, but he's kind of been stuck in this like 60% range. And the games and the production have just been lumpy as heck. 1 week he goes off, and then the very next week he's lumpy like a piece of coal, right?
That's why I was laughing because you were saying lumpy. I'm like, that perfectly describes Cole.
Because I use that term generally, like for guys that do this up and down, but yeah, very appropriate, right, for the topic of this time of the year. But yeah, didn't even put that together at first. But, so yeah, and guys like that are just so frustrating, right? They go boom 1 week. Often when they're on your bench, you're like, oh well, I got to start him, and then he gives you a dud like this week. The other annoying part. Sorry, let me check my handy dandy spreadsheet. Yeah, I think so. The Packers had 4 sacks in this game total against Tampa Bay, who Baker hasn't been taking a lot of sacks this year, at least especially not from the defensive line. And we had 4 sacks attributed to the team, none of them from Rashan Gary. So that's very frustrating. I could swallow it a little easier, right? If there was 1 sack or 0 sacks on the game in total, but when there was 4 to go around and Gary gets none of that action while playing, 60 some odd % of the snaps, that is just incredibly frustrating to me. So, the talent is undeniable, but man, I hope he gets fully healthy next year and they ramp up those snaps closer to the 70 to mid-high 80 ranges that guys like, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith kind of play. And, he joins that sort of elite group, because if he's going to be stuck in this 60 to max 70 snap role, then his production is going to be lumpy for his entire career. And guys like that are super frustrating.
Yeah, I'm with you. When it comes to Rashan Gary, IDP in general, okay, there's gonna be ups and downs. It's just the way it goes. You're gonna have a guy who gets you 3 sacks, and then he's or Khalil Mack's sake, or Chandler Jones even. Remember a few years back, Chandler Jones had 6 sacks, and then he didn't get a sack for like another 10 weeks. So that does happen, but we're starting to see it with Gary, where he had that 3-sack game against the Lions. So you're talking, man, I wish I started him. Oh, now I'm excited. I'm going to start him. And then he hasn't done anything. He's the type of guy that there is consistency when it comes to the defensive line. I truly believe that when you've got your really, really good edge rushers, they do have some sort of consistency, and that's why they're so good. And he's just not one of them. He's very sporadic, or as you call him, lumpy. So for me, I don't know. He's not a guy that I'm a huge fan of going forward. But I don't know, Joe. I am criticizing a former Michigan Wolverine. So I don't know if I'm being if I'm doing something wrong here.
No, I even had just my doubts on him just coming into the NFL. Honestly, what he was going to do. Felt like he was a guy that always didn't give his, relentless effort on the football field and constantly getting after it. But I think one thing that concern is I don't know if the Packers will allow him to get to that upper echelon of snaps, because it seems like they like to rotate, keep guys fresh, and they even do that amongst the interior defensive linemen as well. So I think with that, it could be tough for him to get those consistent snaps and get up into those echelon snap counts, and he's going to have to start doing more with the more limited opportunities that he's going to be getting.
All right, Joe. So who is your lumpy piece of coal from week 15?
Yeah, I mean, you'll be happy to hear this, Steve. I'm choosing Micah Parsons just because, he only had 2 solo sacks, which...
Two solo sacks? What game were you watching? Oh, okay.
Tackles, my bad, Steve. But, he had really good pass rush metrics and everything, but if you played him in an IDP league, you're disappointed. He didn't get you that sack, only came away with those 2 tackles, but he only had 18 pass rush opportunities in this game, and he was still able to really put the dominant pass rush metrics out there. He had a pass rush grade of 93.2 and a pressure rate of 41.2, and, it just was a game script that didn't fit well for the Cowboys and that defensive line to get the sacks opportunities, just because Bills got up early, Cowboys couldn't stop the run, and that's a bad recipe for the IDP.
Yeah, I think it's one of those tough situations, right, where he just didn't have like you were mentioning, he didn't have those pass rush opportunities, and for what he did, like you said, the metrics showed that he actually was pretty strong. So it's just one of those games. Sometimes that's going to happen with you from an IDP standpoint. I mean, Parsons has not been as dominant as we thought that he might, though. All right, guys, I'm going to say something. So, don't jump on my back here. I almost feel like Parsons is overrated. Now I'm talking to an Eagles fan. Watch out here. We're going to get it. This will be interesting.
No, I'm right there with you. My whole offseason narrative was, why are people taking Micah Parsons as the first IDP in pretty much any format? I didn't care if it was best ball. I don't care if sacks are worth 10 points apiece, because he's still just like very much him and Rashan Gary, pretty kind of similar in that in their roles that they're in right now, they don't give you the tackle floors that other defensive ends and edge rushers even give you. Their tackle floors are non-existent. You just said 2, and I think Gary had like 1 assist or something. Like, that's the problem with guys like that, is that they're all boo or bust. So, I think overrated from an IDP standpoint. I think you're right. We know, similar to Gary, like the talent is there, the grades are good, and everything is there. They impact the game in ways not that don't show up in the box score, so they can have credit for that as far as an NFL player. But if we're compartmentalizing and doing the fantasy and the IDP, breaking away from that, they're definitely overrated as IDP players scoring points up in the box score. So I'm totally with you on that.
I feel like they need to get back to moving him around and letting him be that special player. You know, he's really just transitioned to an edge rusher, and I think that's just hurting him. Like he was good when they gave him some middle linebacker snaps and had some edge, and you know he was blitzing from that middle linebacker position, or just allowing him to play more freely. I think they're really kind of limiting him as a player when they've got a special one that can do more than just what they're asking him to do right now.
Yeah, I just think it might be honestly the fact that he's a Cowboy. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, look at this. I mean, let's talk about between. Well, okay, I know they say it's America's team. I get that, but here's the thing, right? You've got Micah Parsons. All right, he has 12.5 sacks this year, versus T.J. Watt, who has 16 sacks. T.J. Watt has 40 solo tackles compared to Micah Parsons' 25 solo tackles. Yeah. So it's like you said, Steve, the tackle floor is completely different. QB hits for TJ Watt, 29, Micah Parsons, 27. So it's like he's still good. He's got 1 forced fumble compared to TJ Watt's 3 forced fumble, and not to mention TJ Watt has a fumble return for a touchdown, a pick, and 3 fumble recoveries. I just don't think it's close. I mean, TJ Watt is clearly better, and you're right. People put Parsons at number 1. I just don't get it.
Yeah, the off season, people were, I guess, either just ignorant of or ignoring the fact that they declared that he was fully transitioning to an edge, hand in the dirt type guy and won't be playing linebacker. And to me, that just screamed that, that's going to significantly impact his IDP value with the loss of the tackle floor. That's all it was, really. And that has totally come to fruition here with the transition, the full transition, and him not getting the linebacker snaps, like you said, Joe. So, I don't know if people were just, again, ignoring that fact or didn't know about it, but that was a huge piece of information that most of us knew about. So, he's still worth, still a guy I would be happy taking maybe towards the back of the first round or something like that. But people were hammering him as the very first, the 101 of IDPs in best balls and whatever it might be. And my whole thing preseason was like, he's going to have a historic record-setting year when it comes to sacks to justify that, because otherwise he's not going to return that 101 value at all.
He is honestly somewhat of a difficult player in Dynasty. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because if you have him, you feel like, oh, well, I have to have him. He's Micah Parsons, right? But then if you ever were to say, let me try to acquire Micah Parsons, they're going to be asking for an arm and a leg because it's Micah Parsons. He's one of those players who just, I think in general, he's somewhat overrated because he's got that huge name value. Those players are almost untouchable at that point because the name value is so high. It raises the stock of the player. And then you really can't – he's unmovable because you can't really come to an agreement because, the player is just like, oh, I can't. It's Micah Parsons. It kind of was like that, I feel like, with Justin Jefferson too, although now you're starting to see him getting injured. Now people might say, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be Michael Thomas 2.0. I'm not saying that. But, it's just one of those things where it's like you have these people that are almost kind of unmovable because the owner is like, oh, I can't possibly move them. And if I were to, it's just going to be too much.
Yeah, totally.
So my lumpy piece of coal from week 15 is going to be defensive tackle Aaron Donald. Donald had a dreamy matchup against the Washington Commanders, and he simply just did not execute, guys. He had 4 hurries, which you don't get points for in IDP leagues, 2 total tackles, 1 solo. Statistically, Donald is having his worst season since 2016, and I know that Sam Howell wasn't in the whole game, but regardless of that Commanders' offensive line is an absolute sieve. So I ask you guys, why didn't he take advantage of it? I think it's concerning. I think Aaron Donald, I talked about this in week 2. You said it was too premature, Joe. Now I'm asking it again. Is he in line to get retired? He's talked about possibly retiring. He obviously, from a performance standpoint, he's taken a step back. Is this the end of Aaron Donald?
You You want to take this one, or you want me to go?
If you want, it's fine.
Yeah, I've been off the Aaron Donald trade pretty much since the beginning of the year as well. Now, in his defense, that entire defensive line did not do anything with the awesome matchup against the Commanders. So a lot of guys that I really liked this week, including Donald, Kobe Turner did nothing, Byron Young did nothing, Michael Heck did nothing. So they all, as a group, failed as an entire unit. So tough to totally blame Donald, but yeah, the mighty have fallen when it comes to him, I think, and yeah, I wouldn't put it past him to retire. So it feels like they might be able to make a little playoff run here deep into the season. So you never know if they do. Maybe he'll want to come back and try to get there one more time. But even if he does, when it comes to fantasy purposes, he might as well be retired. Not someone I'm interested in having die on my roster. I'd rather drop him, move him for a last round rookie pick. I really don't care. But yeah, so some guys that are aging, like I'll always say it about like a Travis Kelce, right? I'm more than fine with, holding on to him until he decides to hang it up. I have no problem with that, with a guy like that. If he declines, but Aaron Donald completely different. There's just too many other players that you can replace him for that it's not worth hanging on in Dynasty, in my opinion.
Now, do you think it's actually like him in his play declining, or do you think it's just the fact that he just doesn't have that superstar talent around him anymore, and it's a lot of no-namers, and he's just got the teams are double teaming, triple teaming him, and just saying, look, we can't let 99 be a game wrecker and make some of these other guys, like a Heights or Kobe Turner beat us that most people really haven't even heard of before?
I think it's a fair question, but I think it could just add to his frustration. I mean, who wants to be triple teamed? You know what I mean? Like, how fun is that going to be? Hike, you know what I mean? You get three guys, stuffing in on you. I don't know. Here's the thing: his pass rush metrics aren't bad. He's still playing well. He's still Aaron Donald. I give credit to Sean McVay. I really do, because I thought, you and I talked about before the season, Joe, I thought this Rams team could be one of the worst teams in the league. Mm-hmm. And they have done really, really well, to my surprise. So I give him a lot of credit. This is probably the most, out of all the years that McVay has coached, I actually think he's earned it this year, in my view. I think he's been overrated, but that's a different story for a different day. But, I think at the end of the day, I think it's a fair question, Joe. I think you're probably right. For me, I more say that it could be the beginning of the end for him, because I don't know how much longer he's going to play.
Yeah, and I do agree. Like, if he stays with the Rams, his fantasy, value and outlook isn't that interesting, unless they get some other talent in there. But, they're still dealing with the salary cap issues and trying to fix that roster as a whole, and everything else. So I don't really envision that happening.
Yeah, I don't know that he's had like tons of super talent. He's been the super talent that other people have benefited from being around him most of his career. So I don't know if that's as huge of an impact of this. I think it's just, age and being worn down. And yes, all those double and triple teams finally kind of catching up to the body there. So
I got to tell you, Joe, I talk about this all the time. I find the NFC a snooze fest, but I gotta say, Rams versus Lions at home, week 1 of the playoffs, that would be a lot of fun. I really hope that game happens.
I agree.
Yeah, a little Stafford golf action.
Oh yeah, that would be very entertaining.
What a narrative.
Back in Detroit too.
Yeah,
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's why it'd be very entertaining. But let's stay present and in the moment, guys. We're not there yet. We're heading into week 16. So, what's on Santa's wish list for the pro tip of the week for week 16?
So very nice transition there. Speaking of Detroit, I like a guy on the team playing Detroit, another Minnesota Viking. Big fan of this guy. Even preseason is one of my pats on the back. Big Josh Metellus over there on the Vikings. Listed as a safety, but I mean he is the Swiss Army knife if there ever was one. He plays safety, linebacker, defense. He's literally played every position on the defense, I believe, outside of an interior lineman. So they use him everywhere, and he's on the field for close to 100% of the snaps every game. So the Lions are giving up the 10th most fantasy points to linebackers or the 6th most to safeties. So at whatever position he's eligible to play or, where they line him up, he's going to have a ton of opportunity to score fantasy points this week. And I he could easily be a candidate for the number one defensive back overall finishing this week very easily. So guy I've been a big fan of all year, just been reaping the benefits of the usage and all the alignment that they've been putting him in. Very favorable. So big fan of safety Josh Metellus over there on the Vikings.
Well, obviously, I like Josh Metellus a lot. You would do, you watch the Minnesota Vikings, and this guy's flying around making plays all the time. Obviously, former Michigan guy.
Boy, here we go.
Success
I didn't even know that.
Here we go. Who is the defensive coordinator for the Vikings again?
Flores.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Flores.
Yeah, big Flores. Yeah, no wonder, because this guy was an absolute nobody until he came to town, Joe.
He's mainly a special teams guy. That's why, I've always been intrigued by him. He played really well at Michigan, but just in the NFL, he really didn't get the opportunities and found himself on the special teams. But he was a pretty good gunner in that standpoint. But now he's getting the opportunities, and he's really making plays.
Yeah, former 6th-round pick, Joe, and more than likely, I don't know his contract situation, but I would not be surprised. Looks like he'll be a free agent next season, so it'll be interesting to see if he goes somewhere else or if they pay him the big bucks. So, Joe, what is your wish list for Santa for Week 16 for the IDP Pro Tip of the Week?
Yeah, we're going to stay at the safety position and going to go with start Julian Love this week, especially, I'm expecting Jamal Adams to miss another game due to that knee injury. You saw Julian Love get the full-time role in the Monday night game, came away with 2 interceptions off of Jalen Hurts. Sorry, Santa.
Sorry.
That's now 3 picks over his last 2 weeks, and I think he's got a good chance of getting another interception, with a possible another full-time role going against the rookie quarterback, Will Levis, who likes to just take the chances and chuck it downfield.
I don't know, Joe, if you looked at the reports, but it looked like Jamal Adams was, back at his house eating bonbons on the couch, not playing the game.
A lot of drama going on there.
Yeah, he was you didn't know this? He was a healthy scratch.
I know he's got a knee injury as well, but
they said he was healthy. They said that he just decided to stay home and loaf it on the couch.
Well, good. He can loaf it, and Julian Love's going to excel.
Oh boy.
I've never been a fan of Jamal Adams, man. You like all these diva players, and I feel like he's always just been overrated because he flies around and makes a play every once in a while, and I never really thought the guy was that great.
You just don't like swagger.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like swagger and confidence. I totally get that, but then there's just these crybaby diva players, and that's what he did. He cried until he got out of his Jets situation and got all the picks and the big bucks over at Seattle. And you just like all these diva crybabies, and that's what I don't like. There's complete difference between swagger, confidence. I don't have a problem with those guys. It's these diva crybabies that if they don't get their way, they throw a temper tantrum.
He's a thumper, Joe. He needs to have that moxie, that strength. He's gonna go and knock him. It's the type of football you like.
I don't really think he's that much of a thumper.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Plus, you can't be a thumper anymore, man. That's not this NFL anymore.
Oh boy, that's a whole different topic. We
X on everybody and play 2-hand touch ball.
Yeah, screw Jamal Adams. He's, we saw him go after that, like reporters, like try to make fun of his wife or something. Like, it just screams like an insecure little baby. Like, I don't know, not a fan.
You guys better be careful. I mean, you guys might be bulletin board material. He might be, he might be posting stuff about you guys.
Yeah, he's gonna post it on his couch while he's eating more bonbons there. Please go for it, Prez.
He can keep sitting at home eating his bonbons while the Seattle Seahawks win games.
Yeah, you guys have no mercy. I can't believe this.
I know you're a Jamal Adams guy. You know, you wanted him in fantasy for whatever reason in the Dynasty League.
Jamal, I'm rooting for you. I signed you to a multi-year contract. I believe in you. Don't listen to these scrubs.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, so Santa, here's my wish list here. My IDP pro tip of the week going into week 15 is going to be starting defensive end Jonathan Greenard. He's not a household name. Might not even be saying his last name correctly. Maybe it's Greenard. Is it Greenard? Greenard?
I think Greenard's right. I think your first inclination was right there.
I think so too. So let's go with it. Because a lot of people may not know who he is, but boy, he's been good lately. He had 2 sacks, 3 hurries, and a QB hit against the Titans. He now has back-to-back weeks of 2+ sacks, and now he faces the Cleveland Browns, who have lost both of their starting offensive tackles. So to me, it's a no-brainer to play him. Like I said, because he's not a household name, who knows? I doubt he's out there, because if you just monitor your waiver wire, you see this guy is just tick, 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 continuing to rack up the points here. But I like him a lot.
Yeah, no Will Anderson last week definitely helped, I think, open up his opportunities at least. Cleveland, even prior to losing those guys, be giving up the 3rd most IDP points to defensive ends. So this screams like another monster game from him. Hopefully he can deliver. So he's very much like DJ Wonnum for me. I wasn't the biggest fan kind of heading into this season, and he kind of is turning me around here a little bit. Although the splits between him and Will Anderson have been incredibly annoying. It seems like it's either one or the other who eats on a weekly basis. I wish they could kind of smooth out that production a little bit and share it a little bit, but especially if Will Anderson's going to be out, Greenard should be a really nice play this week.
Yeah, I like your call with Kennard, Steve. You know, watching the Texans games lately, he definitely pops. You see number 52, making a lot of plays, and he's really, put the pressure on. And he got the nice matchup. He got Joe Flacco, who doesn't really move around much. You should have a lot of opportunities this week.
So, Steve, thanks so much for joining the show today. That concludes all the great stuff we've been talking about. Where can others find your great work?
Yeah. So on Twitter, I'm at Dynasty Santa. That's kind of the shtick here. So I love talking about all things fantasy football or non-fantasy football related.
No, Steve. No, you said before we only talk about fantasy football
as much as possible.
Okay,
fun stuff. I like debating about stupid stuff like music, TV, food, all that kind of crap. That's the fun stuff that I like to have fun with. And then content wise, I am over at idpguys.org. Soon to be rebranded to IDP Plus. So in the off season here, that's kind of our big transition, going from the IDP Guys .org more to IDP Plus, more inclusive, and expanding what we're talking about over there. So that's where you can find all my work and all of our staff's amazing work as well, written, audio, and visual content all over there. So appreciate you guys having me. This is a lot of fun and a very appropriate time of the year, right?
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having you, Steve. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, everywhere you look, there's a plus. So maybe we should consider front office pros plus.
I was thinking the same thing, man. Like, if you can't beat them, I guess everybody's doing the plus thing.
Yeah, right. Why not?
Because there was HBO Max, and it's like, no, let's get rid of that. Let's just do HBO Plus. Isn't that what it's called
now? I thought there's still HBO Max.
Yeah, I think it's just Max.
Is it Max Plus?
It's just Max.
Apple Plus, ESPN Plus.
Right, ESPN's still Plus. Disney is still Plus, but for whatever reason, Max is just Max now. It's not even HBO. They just call it Max.
Well, neither here or there. Go ahead and follow Steve if you don't. It was a pleasure having you. We'll be back next week. Do it all over again, except for I won't be going through President's Coles and Santa's wish list. It'll be studs, duds, and predictions. But we look forward to it.
Come up with some New Year's resolutions, I guess.
Oh, there you go. I like that. Look at you, Joe. That's creative. Well, thank you all for watching, and until next time.